I first met Craig at Atlanta Memorial in Ensign Building. I was a vendor coming into the facility, and he was just super cool, super nice, easy to talk to, made me feel welcome right away. Loved playing basketball with him. Hated going against him because he was so good, athletic, quick, 110% every play. Loved playing with him because you knew he was going to hustle every single play. Super generous as well. Gave me a pair of sneakers. Just nice, unassuming, happy. Good guy that went all in. Gonna miss Craig. Love him.
I wanted to share some thoughts about my friend Craig. When I think of Craig, I think of someone who loved his family, loved to compete, was a lot of fun. I have a particular memory where we were at an Elders Quorum activity and we were doing a gauntlet workout with John Crozier, and he was really putting us through it. And I just have this vision of Craig working so hard, just pounding the hammer, carrying those sandbags, and I was not nearly as athletic or fit, and I was really jealous of how easily or hard he was competing at it. We got to play softball together, and he was hitting home runs and making great catches in the outfield and getting his baseball pants dirty, and it was cool to watch. And I know Alexis and the kids are going through it right now. Just hang in there, and we're sending all the good vibes and peace your way. Rest in peace, man.
As Alan's sister, I know he was known by Craig later in life, but as kids, we called him Alan. But him and I were inseparable as kids. We did everything together, and we didn't realize how lucky we were at the time, but we often lived in places that we could just explore and roam unsupervised and just create and have fun together and never get into trouble, just enjoy being kids. And so I have so many memories with him. Obviously, it's hard to pick just one, but one that comes to mind is in the evenings when we lived in Lake Travis. So Alan would have been around 9, 10, 11. We often went down and just set up a pup tent, this little 2-man tent in our pasture, and took maybe a pack of Oreos or some candy with us, and then went down to the creek when it was dark and used our flashlights to hunt for crawfish and just try to find the biggest one we could. And then at night we would go back and lay in our tent, and as we were kind of getting ready to go to sleep, we'd just talk, and often it would come up what we wanted to do with our lives and what job we wanted to have when we were growing up. And mine always had something to do with horses. I was obsessed with horses. And Alan was always interested in finding some way to fund our family's adventures, which would always, there was this pipe dream of being able to take our family helicopter skiing. We loved skiing as a family, and we would always just imagine that we could go helicopter skiing one day. So Alan's career was always going to be the one that was going to pay for those adventures. So he was going to be a brain surgeon. So that way he would make the big bucks, and he would be able to take us all helicopter skiing. And that to us was just going to be living the life, the dream, if we could go helicopter skiing. And he was going to, pay for all that for us. And I have so many happy memories with him growing up, just fun, and we always just thought that fun would always continue, even as adults. Even when we had families, we would just have adventures together still.
Hey Alexis, and hey Craig. Just want to take a minute and record a little something for you guys. And one of my core memories I have of Craig is watching him play at the park with his kids right by my house. I walked over one day and saw him chasing the boys and having a good time, just throwing the football, and they made it over to the swings and were playing underdog, and I just loved watching Craig interact with the kids. I'll never forget just how kind and how generous he always was. Super intelligent, smart man that if you had a legal question or if you had an engineering question or a healthcare question, he was your guy. I mean, he knew it all. Really just tragic that he's not with us, but I definitely feel his presence and love the fact that his memories that I have of him, the positive ones, will live on with me forever. So we love you, Craig, and definitely will miss you.
Hi, my name is Ellie Fowler. I am Alan's grandmother. We know him as Alan ever since he was born, but some of you may know him as Craig. He was such a cute little child, and when he was, some of my favorite memories of him are when he was just a little tyke. When he was about 3 years old, he and his sisters were visiting, and I took Lori to the beauty shop to get her hairstyled, and it was really, really cute. When she came back to the house, Amy just oohed and awed, and she wanted to get hers done too. And Alan said, "Oh, Lori, I just love your hair. I wish I were a girl so I could have mine done too." And so Craig was so proud, as you can imagine. And then when he was about 8, I went with Annalisa to his school to pick him up. And in the car, Annalisa was talking about education and school. And she said, "Alan, what do you think the first thing you need to do when you get done with college is?" And he says, "Get a driver's license." We thought that was really cute. And then when he was again about 8, he'd been outside playing, and I was upstairs in the computer room and working on the computer, and it was hot. So he came upstairs and he put his elbow on the desk, and he put his hand in his head in his hand, and he said, "Phew, I think I'm going through menopause." And so those are some of the cutest memories that I have of him. There's many, many memories of Alan, but those are some of the cutest and funniest ones that we remember frequently, and they go in my mind a lot. And I just wanted to share them with you. I told these to Alexis after they first got married, and she said, "Oh, you should have said that at the reception," but I didn't really know quite how to go about doing that, so I didn't. And Alan said he was really glad that I didn't. So anyway, fun memories. And as he got older, he was still funny, but now he knew he was funny. So we had a lot of fun with Alan, and we're sure going to miss him a lot.
Aloha whalaroana. There are 2 memories of Craig that stand out of my mind, and I'll never forget them. Well, the first one was when there was one time earlier this past year where he had chapel cleaning duty, and I showed up in the morning, and he opened the chapel, and it was him and his kids, and it was just the 2 of us with his kids cleaning the chapel. And he looked at me and he's like, "AJ, I gotta take my kids to sports. Can you just finish cleaning this one area, and then I'll come back, and if nobody else shows up, I'll go ahead and just clean everything else tonight." I stayed there for an hour and a half before I had to leave, but nobody else showed up. And when I went to church the next morning, chapel looked beautiful. I know it wasn't anybody else that showed up except Craig. And I remember that. I remember telling my wife and the bishopric that Craig cleaned the entire chapel by himself. And that was a huge testament to me, because while a Saturday can be spent doing so many things more fun than cleaning chapel, the 2 things that he cared about was making sure the chapel was cleaned and making sure that his children were able to get to sports. The second thing I remember about Craig was, I remember a little while ago I was kind of just beat up. Health-wise, I was just in a lot of pain. Just came back from the hospital, had surgery coming up, had another surgery just finished, all this kind of stuff. And it was so bad that my wife called my visiting teachers, which Craig was one of them. And he was always over and everything was cool. And I remember my wife calling Brandon, and Brandon was traveling at that time. And Brandon said, "I'll go ahead and reach out to Craig, and don't worry, Craig will find somebody to come to give your husband a blessing." And I remember distinctly, I was killed over on the couch, just in so much pain. I have never felt this much pain in my life. And lo and behold, here comes Craig, straight from work, And who does he have with him? He's got Bishop. And it was just beautiful because I just felt like I was in good hands. And Craig, just as humble as he was like, Adrian, who do you want to give the blessing? And I needed as much help as I can get. So I was like, Bishop, could you give me the blessing? Now, Bishop gave me a beautiful blessing, probably one of the nicest blessings I could have ever gotten. And it was beautiful. But I remember after it was all done, I was telling my wife, I said, you know, when Craig put his hands on my head to anoint me, I literally felt power. I don't know how to explain it, but I felt something through my entire body while he was anointing me. And then when Bishop covered his hands to give the blessing, I knew that everything was going to be fine. I love Craig. I'm grateful for what he's done for our ward, what he's done for me and my family as our visiting teacher. And we express our condolences to the Fowler family. Please know how much we love your father, your husband, and words cannot express how sad we are for you at this loss. We love you. We'll pray for you. We'll be here. Take care.
So Craig came into my life when I was about 14 years old. I grew up with 3 sisters, so I never really had an older brother to teach me guy things or, to take care of me or frankly who had any similar interests to mine. Therefore, when Craig married my sister, he became everything that was missing from my childhood. Craig became the big brother I never had, and he helped me navigate the world as I grew up. He introduced me to my passion for grilling. He helped me write my first resume, and he taught me what it means to be a respectable, good man. He was there every step of the way with me as I graduated high school, and then as I graduated college, and then when I entered the workforce. Craig was extremely empathetic and mature, and he was always willing to drop everything to help anyone. He made my childhood so much fun, and he served as someone to look up to and model my life after. However, the thing I admire most about Craig was his mind. He was one of the smartest people I ever knew. His brain just worked on a different level than anybody else's. He had the ability to figure out how to do just about anything and how to do it really well. There was no problem that Craig couldn't solve, and I was constantly picking his brain when I was trying to learn new skills, such as how to fix a car or how to build furniture. He had a notebook filled with blueprints and math equations for just all the new projects that were always in the works. One memory in particular I have about Craig was the time we worked on my Eagle Scout project together. I'd been assigned the task of building some picnic benches and rebuilding some rusted out trash can holders at a local campground as part of my project. And I was a kid and I had no idea what I was doing, but Craig drove me to Home Depot on the day before with his little notebook, and he helped me buy all the materials, and then he spent the whole night with me in my garage helping me build everything before we installed it at the park the next morning. And I want to say that I did most of the project, but I didn't. Craig pretty much did 95% of the work, and I just held the flashlight. But that memory will always stick out to me because it meant so much to me. It meant so much to me to be doing guy stuff with my big brother in the garage, and I know it meant a lot to him too, just because he loved helping people and he loved sharing his talents. And Craig just had a profound impact on my life, and frankly, I'm not sure how I'm going to navigate life without his guidance going forward. But I'm very grateful for everything he's done for me, and I hope I can make an impact on his kids' lives like he made on mine. And I love Craig very much, and I'm going to miss him a lot.
Several fond memories of Craig. I have great memories playing the Thanksgiving Turkey Bowl and playing pickup basketball with him, including in the Elders Quorum League. He was a good athlete, had what seemed like endless energy, and was very competitive. He would often guard the other team's best player and was a good teammate to have on your side. Outside of sports, I remember at a fathers and sons camp out, he was trying to make cobbler for the group. With all the right intentions, though, he didn't bring all the right ingredients needed and forgot another important piece, a can opener. I remember helping him by holding up my phone for light as he tried in the dark to use rocks to try and hammer his keys or any other type of sharp object he could find into the can to try and open it. He could have just gave up, but he was determined to make this work. Eventually, what seemed like a long time, he was able to get it open. He also had to improvise on a main ingredient, substituting some Sprite for some Cactus Cooler. It turns out the color was actually pretty good. I remember his relentlessness and wanting to have a good experience for not just his boys, but the others as well, all while having a good laugh about it. Craig had a good sense of humor. Lastly, my most recent memory of Craig was during the last primary program at church. I was sitting on the stand and remember looking out at the parents as their kids came up to recite their parts. As his kids came up, I remember he had the biggest smile on his face and was either filming or taking pictures of them with his phone. He was a proud dad who loved his kids very much.
A memory that I have with Craig is when Elena and I had moved to Oklahoma, and I had been in dental school a year, and that year was not an easy year for me. I had some stuff that was difficult for me to deal with, and we had bought a house, and we were moving into that house, and that house needed some work on it. And so Craig and Alexis came to Oklahoma City to visit us. I remember at that time I was struggling with anxiety, and school was stressful, and there was just a lot of pressure and burdens that I was feeling. And I remember when Craig and Alexis came to town, it was just a relief. And I remember feeling like Craig just makes me feel happy, and it was nice to have them there that weekend. It was kind of a reset. But during that weekend, we went to our new house, me and Craig. In the evening, it seemed like, is when we started this big project, but we needed to strip all the wallpaper off the walls in the kitchen and paint the kitchen. And for some reason in our minds, we thought it was going to be a quick and easy project. And Elena and Alexis were at our other apartment, and Elena was pregnant with Easton, but we went there and we started to strip the wallpaper off, and it was slow going. I bet after 3 hours we had 4 by 4 feet of wallpaper stripped off. And so finally Craig just looked at me and he said, "Blaine, this ain't working. We just need to paint over the top of this." And so we proceeded to paint over the top of it, and we were there all night. But during that time, it was... So what I was saying before the phone died was that every time I got together my family got together with Craig and Alexis and their family, that was just kind of an unsaid thing that Craig and I felt probably with one another and shared with one another, is just fatherhood and being a husband. And we, whether it was said or not, both shared some of the same feelings about just how hard it was to be a dad and a husband, and to provide for your family, and just the stresses of life. And I love Craig, and I'm gonna miss him, and he was and is and will continue to be a good example to me, and I know I'll see him again. And yeah.
If I had to pick one thing that I thought described Craig well, would be his grit and his tenacity out on the basketball court. Every time I played with him, he would always give it 110%, and his pure athleticism just amazed me every single time. I think his athleticism was incredible and something I always admired and strived to try to be like. Craig, I'm gonna miss you, and praying for your family.
Alan was a fun-loving guy. He liked fun things. When he was little and Annalisa and Craig and their family lived outside of Austin at
Lake Travis.
Lake Travis. When we would go there, we'd have to wait for Alan and Amy to come out of the woods or the trail that they had been on, because they were good buds and they were always finding things and telling us about them. And we decided one summer that we would take all of the grandchildren that were old enough on a trip. And we had to really make it work because there was 6. And as we were getting prepared to go on the ride, we'd already been on the road a few days, and we had quite a few dirty clothes. So we decided we wouldn't take them home with all of those. We'd get everything washed. So we went down into the closest town, and right now I can't remember the name of it, where we got our tickets for the ride on the railroad. But we went to a washateria, and in the washateria were games, and you had to put quarters in them to play. Well, Granddaddy got a lot of quarters together, and he was going around putting quarters in everybody's machine so they could play while we were doing the washing. We kind of ignored Alan because he never hollered, "I want quarters." And finally, Granddaddy went over and said, "Alan, let me put some quarters in your machine." And Alan said, "No, Granddaddy, mine works without quarters." He was very young. He was about 7, I think.
Yeah.
And he was just working his, but it had a little display that showed whatever he was playing, and it showed it over and over and over again. But Alan just kept punching that little trigger, and he was so happy. He said, "Granddaddy, this machine doesn't need quarters."
Thing that I will always remember the most about Craig from all the times that we were able to hang out with him and spend time with him was that he was such an amazing father. He was one that he wasn't a dad that just sat back and watched his kid play. He was right in the middle of it every single time. He was building sandcastles with them, he was wrestling them, he was holding them. He was right in the thick of it every time that he loved his kids. He was always such an amazing father to them, and made it known to everybody that he loved them and that he would do anything for them in this world. And he was always happy playing with them. He was always big smile on his face and always had so much energy to play with them. And it was just such a wonderful thing to witness and to watch what a wonderful dad that he was to his children.
I've always known Craig as Alan, as that was the name that he went by when I first met him about 18 years ago. I've been fortunate to spend a lot of time with him, especially in the early years. Spent a lot of time skiing. I think back of all the best times that I had skiing, all of our best days, and with almost every one of them, Alan was there. He had this way to push us to go have fun and just make everything just more enjoyable. But there's one story I wanted to share. Him and I were both really competitive, and so we push each other. And there's one day we were skiing in Utah, and we were flying down this hill, and it was real overcast, so it was really flat light. It was hard to see the bumps in front of us. And I was ahead of him, and I could hear him directly behind me. And towards the bottom of the hill, right when we had, or as fast as we were gonna go, I caught an edge and fell pretty hard. And before I hit the snow, I remember looking back up because I knew Alan was about to hit me. And I looked up and I saw Alan's face, and it was this look of terror. And because he knew that he didn't have time to react and go around me, he was going to go right into me. And the next thing I knew, I saw Alan flying over me. He jumped up and kind of tucked to pick his skis up to make sure that it didn't hit me, but it caused him to hit really hard when he landed. And this is where Alan's character really came out, is before he even stopped, before he even slid to a stop, he was yelling up at me, seeing if I was okay. And he just kept saying, "Are you okay? Are you okay?" And it wasn't until after I was able to assure him that I was fine that he realized how bad of a situation he was in, how bad he was hurting, how hard of a hit he took. and it was a good 5 or 10 minutes before he was able to stand up again. But the reason why I tell that story is because that was Alan. He was always concerned about other people more than himself. He wanted to make sure everyone else is doing better than him. Even when he was hurting, even when he was in pain, it was always other people's feelings that were in front of his. That's why I'm going to miss him so much. This world is not going to be as right of a place without him in it. And I love him so much, but we'll see him again.
I met Craig a few years back when him and his family moved into the area, and we became natural friends. His kids' ages were the same as mine, and we just found ourselves spending a lot of time with one another at the park or the beaches or whatnot. And we grown our relationship through church basketball, where we spent pretty much every week for the last 2-3 years playing with each other. Craig was the type of basketball player that you needed on your team to win. He did all of the gritty work. He dove for the ball. He followed his shot. He played intense defense. And I find myself selfishly trying to get him on my team because I knew if I had him, I had a good chance of winning. But off the court, Craig was a special human being with a special heart. What I admire most about Craig is that he loved truly being a dad. He loved his kids. And he made sure that they had memories and moments that would be with them forever. He made sure that they had a foundation of the gospel. I still remember all of his kids' birthday parties, and him and his wife always made sure that they had the best theme parties. My kids always loved going to them, and he made sure his kids had great memories. I'm going to miss Craig. I'm going to miss our friendship. I'm going to miss seeing him behind me in church on Sundays. I'm going to miss texting him on Saturday mornings to figure out what he's doing for the day so that we could find a way to get with each other. I'm going to miss giving him a hard time when he says Calafia Beach the way he does, which is Calafia. I'm going to miss Craig. And I look forward to the day when we get to see each other again.
My name is Matt Walter. I was in the same ward as Craig and played basketball with him a couple times a week for a couple of years. And two things that stand out to me about Craig when I think about him. One is that he really loves his kids. One evidence of that is my son Harvey had a birthday party this last year, and it was a Avengers superhero party. And as part of the party, I was gonna be a bad guy, and I needed some other adults to be a bad guy with me, so that all the kids could throw water balloons at us. And it was over a dozen kids, and it was them chasing me and this other person around the park with water balloons, because they were all superheroes and we were the bad guys. So the first person that came to my mind to call was Craig, and he agreed, even though he knew that he'd be getting drilled with all these water balloons. And anyways, I just think that that's evidence that he really just loves kids in general and loves his kids. Luke and Carson were out there along with Harvey, pegging both Craig and I with water balloons relentlessly, and that's a really fun, special memory I have of Craig. And then the other one is just that I know that Craig loves his wife, Alexis. The last phone call and time I ever spoke to Craig before he passed, he was actually calling me to get my opinion on a gift that he wanted to get for Alexis for her upcoming birthday as a Uni pizza oven. And I just thought that it was thoughtful that he was doing all this research and trying to figure out and pre-plan the gift that he wanted to get to help Alexis to have a special upcoming birthday. And so that's something that also just really stood out to me.
Craig was my brother-in-law, but he kind of always referred to me as his brother because he only had sisters growing up. So I always called him my brother, and that's what he was. He was my older brother. So I was very fortunate to have him as an older brother when I moved to California. I was able to see him on a daily basis. He helped me with my Spanish homework. He was at my prom. He was at my homecoming when I didn't have a date. So he took pictures with me before the dance with all the the funny poses and stuff. And when I broke my wrist, we would play horse in the backyard. Even with my left hand, I still tried to beat him. We were always really competitive. We threw the football together all the time. He'd be my wide receiver when I needed a receiver to throw the ball to. We did everything together. We, either I'd be holding Carson and he'd be holding Luke, or I'd be holding Luke and he'd be holding Carson. And we'd always just be walking together and talking together, and just we're always together. I'm very thankful for that. And, I think the best way to remember Craig is to remember him as not just an amazing father and an amazing son, but as an amazing brother to his brothers. I assume and know that he was a great brother to his sisters as well, but when he came into this family, he was a great brother to us, to me and Austin as well. And he always put us first. He helped Austin and me with both of our Eagle Scout projects. We both would not be in the nest without him. And I certainly wouldn't have got a good grade in Spanish. And I certainly wouldn't have been as excited about learning Spanish on my mission without Craig always talking about how much he loves speaking Spanish. Love you, Craig.
All right, I'd like to share a few of the attributes and memories I have of my good friend Craig. I got to know him and was privileged to get to know him on the basketball court at the dynamic time of COVID and the shutdowns across Southern California. Some of the fondest memories I have is when I was first meeting Craig, just, his quick wit, his humor, and just the jokes that his sarcasm and humor seemed to match my own. And so it was always fun, joking with him, having side comments. There were times where it'd be looking for an open gym when everything was shut down. And I think we're at the building off of Alicia, and we're trying to break into the back door of a church building, or just, anytime. It was just always a good time when Craig was around. I also have memories at campouts, at the beach, throwing the football with him, going head first, not paying attention to the wave that was about to crash down on us. So just a really good guy, great personality, and genuine person. And then the other things is he was somebody who always gave 110%. It didn't matter on the basketball court if our team was down, 2-13. Craig was going to be out there. He was going to dive into chairs. He was going to go full out on defense. You never wanted Craig defending you at basketball because you're always up to take a beating, and he never gave up on any loose ball. So he'll be missed, and on the basketball court, and we will always have in our minds ingrained the full court, what we done as the full court Craig pass, where he puckers his lips, full on chest, brings his arm back and throws that ball. And he always believed in us more than we believed in ourselves, as that ball typically sailed about 10 feet above any of our heads. So, very, very grateful that I got to know Craig, and we'll miss him and his friendship.
I first met Craig when I was 15 years old and in high school, and I just became friends with his brother-in-law, Aaron. I had recently told Aaron that I had a little bit of a crush on his brother, Austin, hoping no one would ever find out. But one day I was at their house sitting next to Austin, and Craig burst through the door and said, "Is this the girl that has a huge crush on Austin?" And I was mortified, but now knowing Craig, I know he's probably just so excited to see my reaction and embarrass me. And ever since that day, he made me feel so included and a part of the family. He would always bear his testimony to me, and he was even the one to speak on my baptism. I looked up to Craig in so many different ways. He had such a big heart, he was so adventurous, and I will just miss him so much every day.
So when Craig joined our family, I gave him the nickname of CJ because my dad's name is Craig, and so we already had a Craig. And so he liked CJ, but he also gave himself the nickname of Funkle because he was the fun uncle. And he was always digging holes in the sand at the beach with the boys and playing in the pool, throw him in the water. He wasn't taking a break and hiding because it was too chaotic. He was always right in the thick of it because he was fun, the Funkle. And so I'm gonna miss that. But he was really fun, even not with the nephews. He was fun with me, and we would joke and laugh a lot, and so I'm gonna miss that. But he's a Funkle CJ.
I'm happy to leave a message for my friend and share a few memories that I have about Craig. I met Craig maybe 5 years ago playing basketball. I think he had been invited out, and we've got a really fun group of guys that plays regularly on Tuesday nights. And Craig was a frequent participant in our pickup ball, and just really always enjoyed playing with him. We're both left-handed, although Craig's maybe 10 years younger, more athletic, and has a better jump shot. But other than that, we're very similar, and always enjoyed playing with him and competing with him. I'm a competitive guy, and he is too, and so we both love to play and love to compete. So just some fun stories. Craig has a few signature moves. He's got a sweet jump shot, but he's also, if he senses that he's gonna miss it, he always crashes the boards and will a lot of times crash into people in the process. But also on fast breaks, if he sees an opportunity, he'll make a laser pass. It's not uncommon for it to go soaring into the wall or into the ceiling, but occasionally it'd make it on target. We had some fun memories during COVID when everything was shut down. There was a smaller group of us that would get together and play 3-on-3 at the Antonio Chapel, and we'd kind of have to roll in quiet with our lights off and keep the hallway lights off just so that we didn't attract any attention, and we didn't want to tip anybody off that we were playing, so that they'd even shut it down. So that was kind of fun to do that secretly for, I don't know, maybe a year before things started opening up again. So always fun. I'd run into Craig out on the fields. I think our boys were the same age on soccer and basketball, and so you could tell how much he loves his kids and how much he enjoyed playing sports with them. And then more recently started working with Craig. So I had recruited him to an administrator position. We had a gal that was out on maternity leave, and he helped us a year ago and kind of stepped right in and helped prepare for survey and successfully navigated them through that and did a really nice job filling in. And then more recently with an opportunity that we had in La Jolla, and Craig kind of jumped right in, and we were really impressed and proud of the energy and the ideas that he had, and how he was just looking at creating solutions for a building that needed to be turned around, and the staff was responding well to him. We were really starting to see some nice performance, and he seemed to really enjoy kind of settling into that role. So really appreciate the energy and passion that he brought, not only to his play in basketball, but also professionally, and to see how smart and creative he was as a leader. So sure do love Craig. We'll never forget him. I I love and care for the family, and I'm happy to help in any way that I can. Would love to do anything that I could to support you guys, and wish you the best. Rest in peace, brother, and until we meet again.
Hey, my name is Brian Fagan. I knew Craig because we played basketball once or twice a week together, and he was also on my softball team in Ladera. And when I think of Craig, the very first thing I think of, and will always think of, is just how hard he played sports and how much effort he gave. He was truly 100% in, and more than that, I've never seen anybody play, pick up basketball as hard and as passionately as he does. And I've never seen anybody play softball as hard as he does. He's the type of player that would hit a ground ball, and he would run to first base with every ounce of energy he had, trying to beat out the throw, where most of us just kind of like give up if we hit a ground ball. Or if there's like a fly ball in the outfield, Craig was going to run. He was going to dive for that ball no matter how far away it was. He was going to make his absolute best effort to get there. And I remember the fields we played on in softball, they're really, really long. They don't have fences, so the grass just goes on forever. And Craig played outfield, and so I knew, I played shortstop, so I knew that if there was a ball hit over Craig's head, Craig was going to run after that ball. He's going to run 100 yards to go pick up that ball. He's going to pick it up, and he's going to throw that ball back to me as if we still have a play at home. And more times than not, the runner had already rounded the bases and touched home before Craig even picked up the ball, because the field is so big. But Craig would pick that ball up, and he would turn and he would fire it in as hard as he could, just in case we ever had a chance to get that guy out at home. And it made it fun as a shortstop, because I knew that outfielder was all in. He was going to try. And so anybody who played sports with him knows exactly what I'm talking about. Like, he gave it 1,000%, and I'll never forget that.
So one of my favorite experiences with Craig that to me just really showcases what type of person he was and how willing he was to help other people was a sister had moved into the Rancho Mission Viejo area and had reached out to our elders quorum and asked for some help hanging a TV. So Craig and I volunteered, and we set the date as a weekday, and we went over there in the morning before work and knock on the door and go in, and we said, okay, we're here to hang the TV. And she actually had 6 TVs that she needed hung in 6 different rooms. And Craig and I start working on the first TV, and we're just kind of laughing about how many TVs there were to hang. And we get the first TV all set up, and it took a little longer than we thought. And we both had work commitments that we had to go to, and I told Craig, well, maybe we can coordinate with her and come back and finish it up in the evening or another time. And he just said, no, I'm just gonna push some work stuff, and I'll stay and hang the TVs. And that inspired me, and I just thought, man, like, look at this, like, this guy's gonna push off work stuff so he could help this person. So he convinced me and set a good example for me. So I pushed my stuff off, and we stayed and we hung the TVs, and it was just something I'll never forget. Like, and that's just Craig. That's just who Craig was, right? He was always smiling, always happy, always laughing, and always was willing to be there to help if you texted him or asked him. And I just loved being around Craig. He had such an energy around him. I loved playing basketball with him. He was always so good to Tristan, and I'm just really happy that he got to be a part of my life, and really honored for that.
I have a couple of really good memories of Craig. He really was a blessing to have in our ward. He magnified his calling really well. He was the ward building coordinator for a while, and was great at sending out messages all the time to get people to go clean the building. He was great at having the donuts there for the kids and for the families. and was very friendly and helpful the entire time we would clean the building. He was also a great contributor in Elders Quorum meetings. I always enjoyed hearing his comments. They were always very thought-provoking and insightful. I had the privilege of being his ministering companion for a while, and he was a great ministering brother. I remember one time I was out of town on vacation, and one of the brothers that we ministered to needed a priesthood blessing, and I texted Craig and told him I was out of town, and he immediately texted me back to let me know that him and the bishop were on their way over to this brother's house to make sure he got a blessing. And I also just want to say he was a good friend. He was a very, very friendly person in the ward. Would always say hi to me. Was great at asking questions about what was going on in my life, and I really appreciated that. And I just really admired him. I thought my wife was telling me that, and I agree with this, that if our ward was high school, Craig would be the prom king or the ward king. He was just really liked, really loved by everyone in the ward, and we're gonna miss him.
Before his 18th birthday, Alan and I went on a motorcycle trip. We went from Conifer, Colorado, all the way out to Palmyra, New York. We rode Honda Goldwings. I rode mine, and he rode his grandpa's. We had a great time. We spent the first night at outside a rest stop outside of Des Moines. Just rolled our sleeping bags out on the ground and slept out under the stars. Then the next day we made it to Palmyra. Found out that we had driven 950 miles that second day. And there's a little on a ward that you can get for motorcycles if you ride 1,000 miles, but we would have went another 50 had we figured that out beforehand. But by the time we rolled in at 1 in the morning, we were pretty exhausted anyway. But on this trip, we went to the Whitmore farm where the church was organized. We went to Palmyra. We went to Kirtland, to Johnson's farm, to Nauvoo and Adirondack, and then we also went to the Liberty Jail in Independence. It was a great experience. I had a fun time seeing some of those sites, and one Adirondack that I'd never had seen before, and of course Alan hadn't been to any of them. He told us afterwards that he had always planned on going on a mission, but after this trip he wanted to go on a mission. It really helped solidify his testimony. One final thing on that was the last night we spent outside the rest stop in Kansas, just out under the stars, and that was Alan's 18th birthday. And we were talking, as we laid there, we were talking about how not many 18-year-olds have that type of experience. But it's one that Alan loved, and one that I'll cherish with him forever.
So Craig was very important to me, very special. He was a fantastic brother-in-law, and he was always very, very involved in our lives. For better or worse sometimes with us. We were very much like siblings. But he would always pick me up from my many adventures. He was the one that I would debrief with on the car ride home, and I would tell him about all of my stories, and he would laugh at my decisions, and we would bond over that. I would love to get a reaction out of him and share the most outlandish things that I could think of that I thought about doing or did just to see what he would say, and it was always a fun time for us, and it was our only alone time, so we really could enjoy that. And in the later years when I calmed down, he would still drive me to and from the airport, but we would talk about if I should go to law school, what I would be expecting. I always knew that I could count on him to give me a letter of recommendation, to give me sound advice, to be supportive. And the second to last trip that I had with him, I was speaking to the room and I just started crying about some things that I'm worried about in my life, and he was working on his computer and he just looked up and offered sincere advice and sincere counsel, and it just was very special to me and meant a lot to me because it could have been an awkward situation, having your sister-in-law crying about, her life fears, but instead of that, he leaned into the love and he leaned into the support, which he always did. And I will always cherish that memory, and I will always miss him, and I already can feel his absence in my life. He was just such a rock for me, and I love you very much, Craig, and I love you, Fowlers, and yes. When Craig came into my life, I was 9 years old, and we had so much in common. He never made me feel like, his wife's little sister. He felt like my friend and my brother. We would always go to trampoline parks together, because Craig could do a back tuck, and I thought that was the coolest thing. We would swim in the ocean together no matter how cold it was. We would make things together. One time I had a mermaid tail and it broke, and so Craig took me to Home Depot and we bought plexiglass and we carved it out together and everything, and he helped me make a new one. And we were always talking about plans to make, different features in my bed, make a porch swing, that whole type of thing. But Craig was also just so helpful to me and to everyone. Sometimes he would pack my lunch and drive me to school because we lived together when I was in middle school. And so when I would get to school and I would open my lunch, I would see a sticky note. And there were multiple, but one that I remember is I was in The Lion King at the time in my school musical, and I was an antelope, and so he wrote on the sticky note, every morning an antelope wakes up and knows it has to be faster than the fastest lion or it'll die. And the lion wakes up every day knowing that it has to be faster than the slowest antelope or it will not eat. You determine your fate. And I've kept that with me forever. Craig had a lot of cool slogans, a lot of wise words, and he'll always inspire me. So
Alan was a compassionate child and a compassionate human being and a compassionate adult. In second grade, his teacher called me one day, and it was after school, and she said she just wanted to tell me about an incident that had happened with a young boy in his class, and evidently this young boy was getting picked on a lot, and Alan had been taking up for him and standing up for him, and even telling his friends to be nice to him and to treat him different. And it made such an impression on this teacher that she wanted to let me know, and she made a special effort to call me about that. That was just one of many incidences, and the next one I want to share is when he was a missionary, and his first companion was from Bolivia, and several emails into his mission, a couple of emails into his mission out in the field, he sent an email and said, "Mom, he came out in a suit 3 sizes too big for him and shoes that didn't fit him, that he had to stuff paper in or whatever in the toes to get them to fit. He said, I used my money to buy him a suit and new shoes. And I was just so happy that Alan, that he thought of that. That was probably something that just came second nature to him. Didn't have to think about it. But that was our Alan. And he's always been like that, and he always will be. Love you, Alan.
Gonna miss Craig. Love him. We'll miss him and his friendship.
And I will just miss him so much every day.
We're gonna miss him a lot.
We're gonna miss him.
Craig, I'm gonna miss you.
We love you.
I love Craig very much, and I'm gonna miss him a lot.
So we love you, Craig, and definitely will miss you.
Love you, Craig.
Love you, Alan.
I love you very much, Craig.
Really happy that he got to be a part of my life, and really honored for that.
Rest in peace, brother, and until we meet again.
Rest in peace, my friend.
We'll see him again.
I look forward to the day when we get to see each other again.